Tech tycoon brings mistress to gala. Pregnant wife arrives with influential billionaire and steals the spotlight. They were once the golden couple, until deception, shattered trust, and the storm of ambition tore apart their fairy tale life. Julian West, a self-made tech mogul with a hunger for the extravagant, dared to flaunt his bold mistress at the most elite charity gala of the year. But when his pregnant wife, the elegant and adored Evelyn West, made a surprise entrance hand in hand with one of the world's most formidable billionaires, everything shifted in ways no one could have predicted. In a single night, secrets would be unearthed, loyalties tested, and reputations turned upside down. Prepare for a story brimming with power plays, heartbreak, and oh, so sweet revenge. The vast West estate in Napa Valley, California, was, to the outside world, the definition of luxury. Towering white Tuscan columns flanked the front entrance. Pristine rose gardens stretched endlessly into the hills, and a winding cobblestone driveway snaked through the property, inviting guests toward opulence. Inside, priceless artwork adorned the walls, originals by Picasso, Monet, and Diaz, silently declaring the unimaginable wealth of its owners. Yet beyond those grand doors, the air was heavy with unspoken truths and quiet resentment. Evelyn West, 5 months pregnant, sat alone on a plush velvet sofa in the sunken living room, her hand gently resting on her small baby bump. Though she was cocooned in comfort and luxury, the emotional isolation was suffocating. The glow of the house's chandeliers only seemed to cast longer shadows. For weeks, whispers had echoed in social circles that her husband, Julian West, was involved with another woman. The tabloids, always bloodthirsty for drama, ran cryptic headlines like "Tech giant caught in secret romance" and "Billionaire's late-night escapades." At first, Evelyn had brushed them off. Julian had always been the doting partner, showering her with lavish gifts, love notes, and last-minute escapes to secluded island resorts. But even those memories had started to feel staged, like well-rehearsed scenes in a crumbling play. As the weeks wore on, Julian began coming home late, muttering paper-thin excuses, and sometimes the lingering scent of an unfamiliar perfume clung to his $1,000 suits. That's when doubt began to creep into Evelyn's thoughts. Even the household staff had grown more reserved, too quiet, too watchful. The once serene home now echoed with silence and suspicion. Then one evening, Evelyn decided she needed answers. She waited in his study, a room that radiated old-world sophistication, with towering mahogany shelves and a vintage world map stretched across one wall. She remembered how Julian used to trace routes across that map, dreaming aloud of new ventures. But tonight, the sight of her husband filled her with dread, rather than admiration. "Julian," she said quietly, her voice shaking despite her attempt at calm, "I need to ask you something. Are you having an affair?" He paused, his broad shoulders stiff beneath his custom blazer. A storm of emotions crossed his face: denial, offense, and then something else Evelyn couldn't place. Finally, he gave a faint shrug, a gesture so cold it left her hollow. "Does it matter, Evelyn?" he replied, refusing to even deny it. The words hit her harder than any confession. Not only had he betrayed her, he didn't even think she deserved the dignity of a lie. She felt her strength fade. Their marriage, once rooted in love and loyalty, now hung by a thread. This was the same man who had once held her hand through a hurricane at sea, promising never to let go. Yet now, he couldn't even offer her a lie to ease the pain. A single tear slipped down Evelyn's cheek. A quiet, devastating answer to her question. She said quietly, her voice trembling despite every effort to keep it composed. "I need to know. Are you having an affair?" He paused, his broad shoulders tensing beneath the fabric of his custom-tailored jacket. A storm of emotion flickered across his face: offense, hurt, and then something Evelyn couldn't quite read. For a fleeting second, his lips parted like he might deny it, like he might reach out and grab her hand, but then he stopped. He shut that door. Finally, he offered a faint shrug, a movement so chilling it left her frozen. "Does it matter, Evelyn?" he replied, refusing to deny the rumors outright. His voice was flat, detached, as if her heartbreak was a minor inconvenience, rather than the collapse of everything they had built. She felt her strength evaporate. She had always believed that their marriage was built on love, loyalty, and shared dreams. This was the man who had once gripped her hand through a fierce ocean storm, vowing never to let go. And now he couldn't even offer her a shred of reassurance. Not even a lie. Not even a whisper of guilt. A single tear slid down Evelyn's cheek, a quiet, devastating symbol of heartbreak. The conversation ended as abruptly as it had begun. Julian left, claiming an urgent business meeting, leaving Evelyn alone in the suffocating silence of the estate. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't look back. The door clicked shut like a final verdict. She sat for what felt like hours, her gaze locked on the ticking grandfather clock in the corner. Each swing of the pendulum chipped away at her sense of stability, hammering home the truth. Everything had changed. Even time felt different now, colder, sharper, less forgiving. That same evening, Evelyn's phone rang. It was her longtime friend and PR strategist, Natalie Pierce. Natalie had guided her through countless philanthropic campaigns over the years. "There's a major charity gala coming up," Natalie explained. "It's the Pacific Hope Foundation Gala, being held in San Francisco. You'll be in the room with top investors, world-renowned philanthropists. Even Elon Musk and François-Henri Pinault are expected to attend. Evelyn, this is your chance to show everyone you're still standing, that you're in control." Evelyn hesitated. She didn't feel strong. The thought of facing whispered conversations and relentless media speculation made her stomach twist. She imagined the flashing cameras, the fake smiles, the hushed tones saying "Poor Evelyn" as she passed. But Natalie's words planted a seed, a quiet spark of resolve. In that moment, Evelyn made a decision. If her husband was going to parade his betrayal in public, she would not crumble behind closed doors. She would face the world with her head held high, for herself and for the child she was carrying. She would not be the silent wife locked away in a mansion of secrets. If she was going to be watched, let it be on her terms. The next day, the tabloids were ablaze with a single name, Giselle Marquette. Glossy photos splashed across gossip columns showed a raven-haired beauty with a flawless figure dressed in shimmering haute couture. The headlines were merciless in their speculation. Julian West's mystery flame revealed, and billionaire spotted with French starlet in late-night rendezvous. In the candid shots, Giselle wore an enigmatic smile that seemed to whisper, "I know exactly what I'm doing." That smile seemed to say, "Yes, I know exactly what I'm doing." Evelyn stared at the newspaper, her breakfast untouched. She tried to steady her breath, silently repeating to herself that tabloids thrived on exaggeration. But a small, persistent voice inside her whispered, "What if this time, it's true?" And if it was, then Giselle Marquette's reputation didn't exactly scream discretion. She was a French socialite, steadily gaining fame in the film industry, rumored to have a trail of powerful lovers behind her, and a flair for scandal. The media devoured her every step, and now, according to the latest headlines, she had her eyes fixed on Julian. Just as Evelyn reached for her phone to call Natalie for a distraction, the front gates buzzed. Moments later, she watched from the large bay window as a sleek crimson sports car zipped up the driveway, flinging gravel in its wake. Julian stepped out from the passenger side, his face locked in that emotionless mask Evelyn had grown to dread. The driver's side opened, and out stepped Giselle Marquette herself, her stiletto heels clicking sharply against the polished stone driveway. Evelyn's stomach turned. So it was true. Part of her had expected Julian to deny the affair if it ever came to light. Maybe say Giselle was just a business associate, offer some thin reassurance that Evelyn still had a place in his life. But this wasn't subtle. The mistress had shown up at their home. Evelyn rushed to the grand foyer, her breath faltering with every step. She tried to stay composed as Julian escorted Giselle through the massive entrance. The marble floors mirrored their silhouettes, adding to the surreal weight of the moment. Evelyn had never felt more exposed. The three of them stood frozen in place, a standoff without words. The tension was heavy, tangible. "Julian," Evelyn began, trying to steady her voice, "what is she doing here?" Giselle's lips curled into a smug smile. "I was in the neighborhood," she purred, her soft French accent giving her words a polished, calculated edge. "Julian kindly offered to show me the property." Julian didn't flinch. His once affectionate gaze now met Evelyn's with a flat, unreadable expression. "Giselle is my guest," he said simply, his tone void of comfort. Evelyn instinctively placed a hand on her belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the emotional blow. She had feared the possibility of infidelity, but she never expected Julian would flaunt it so shamelessly, in their own home. The audacity of it made her nauseous. Giselle glanced toward the sweeping staircase and the ornate chandelier overhead, an heirloom Evelyn and Julian had won at an art auction in Paris. "Stunning," Giselle murmured. "You have exquisite taste, Evelyn." The words dripped with condescension, cutting sharper than any scream. Evelyn felt her cheeks flush with heat. She wanted to respond, to tell Giselle to leave, to reclaim her space, but a wave of dizziness surged through her. The pregnancy had made her physically more fragile, and the emotional weight of this confrontation pushed her to her edge. She closed her eyes briefly, trying to regain control. Julian must have noticed. He took a single step toward her, his brow creased in concern. For the briefest second, Evelyn thought he might reach out, might ask if she was okay. But then Giselle looped her arm through his, pressing her body against his with practiced intimacy. Julian stiffened, caught in that moment between concern for his wife and some distorted loyalty to his mistress. When Evelyn opened her eyes again, Julian and Giselle were already making their way up the sweeping staircase, heading toward the second-floor balcony, where their most treasured artwork lined the walls. The message was unmistakable. Giselle wasn't just a passing indulgence. She was a welcomed guest in Evelyn's marital home, with Julian's blessing. Evelyn stood frozen, tears threatening to spill. In that instant, she saw with painful clarity that her marriage had crossed an irreversible threshold. Her heart shattered, and at the same time, something inside her solidified. For far too long, she had worn the mask of the devoted wife, the elegant hostess who never questioned her husband's allegiances. But if Julian was willing to publicly humiliate her by legitimizing his affair, then Evelyn would find a way to reclaim control of the narrative, her dignity, and the future she was fiercely trying to protect for her unborn child. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to Natalie. "You were right about the gala. I'll go. Help me make an entrance, they'll never forget." 3 days before the Pacific Hope Foundation Gala, Evelyn traveled into San Francisco to meet Natalie at a high-profile networking event for philanthropic leaders. Wearing a sleek black maternity dress that hugged her growing belly in all the right places, Evelyn moved through the room with quiet elegance that turned heads. Despite the emotional wreckage she carried inside, she knew how to maintain composure in public. She smiled gently, exchanging pleasantries with familiar faces, artists, benefactors, local officials. Natalie Pierce, ever the strategic force in a tailored white pantsuit, was a whirlwind of charm and command. She floated from group to group, making introductions with diplomatic ease. Her mission was clear: connect Evelyn with the kinds of allies whose power could eclipse Julian's, just in case he tried to undermine her during the gala. It was near the sparkling ice sculpture of the Golden Gate Bridge, an odd yet captivating centerpiece, that Natalie beckoned Evelyn over. Standing next to her was Damian Cole, the CEO of Titan Nova Technologies. A towering figure both in stature and in the world of innovation, Damian was renowned for his visionary leadership in global tech. Rumor had it, he was among the richest men on the planet, someone often mentioned in the same breath as Elon Musk, an icon of disruptive innovation. Tall, with a confident presence and silver-streaked temples that gave him a dignified charm, Damian stood out, even in a room packed with elite power players. "This is Evelyn West," Natalie said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "She heads the charitable arm of the West Foundation. She's also a dear friend." Evelyn extended her hand, her eyes meeting Damian's. A quiet spark passed between them, a mix of intrigue and mutual respect. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. West," he said, taking her hand gently. "Natalie's told me you're doing extraordinary work, especially in children's health care." Despite the emotional storm she'd been weathering, Evelyn felt a flush of pride. She had poured her heart into building better pediatric care systems for underserved communities. "I do what I can," she replied modestly. The three of them continued to chat, touching on everything from breakthroughs in tech to high-impact philanthropy. Evelyn found Damian refreshingly grounded, free of the usual self-importance so often found in billionaire circles. He listened intently, and when he spoke, his words were thoughtful and rich with insight. Eventually, Natalie excused herself with a knowing smile, leaving Evelyn and Damian alone by the glowing sculpture. its shimmering reflections dancing across the walls like kaleidoscopic art. "So," Damien said, folding his arms casually, "Natalie mentioned you'll be attending the Pacific Hope Foundation Gala this weekend. I'll be there presenting a new digital platform for charitable fund management. Perhaps we could talk collaboration?" Evelyn's heart fluttered. She sensed that Damien's offer wasn't purely professional. There was something more, a genuine interest in getting to know her. A thought flickered through her mind. How would Julian react if she walked into the gala on Damien's arm? Julian, who hadn't hesitated to flaunt Giselle. Would it be petty to show up with someone just as powerful? Or was it simply self-preservation? "I'd be honored," she said softly. "But to be completely honest, the gala might be complicated for me." He tilted his head slightly, concern in his gaze. "Complicated how?" Evelyn hesitated. Should she tell him the truth? She was private by nature, and Damien was still a stranger, at least for now. A stranger, yet something in his demeanor made him easy to trust. Evelyn decided to be honest, if not fully transparent. "I'm going through some personal challenges," she admitted, her hand gently resting on her belly. "This event could go either way, for better or worse." Damien nodded, his expression full of quiet understanding. "I get it. Sometimes public appearances can crystallize private realities, but know this, if you need an ally, business or otherwise, I'm here." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. It disarmed her. In that moment, Evelyn realized she didn't have to walk into the gala, into Julian's looming shadow, alone. She could go in strong, with an unexpected but powerful ally by her side. Before parting ways, Damien handed her a sleek, matte black business card engraved with a shining silver emblem of Titan Nova's signature comet. "Call me if you need anything," he said, "even if it's just moral support." Evelyn tucked the card into her purse, her thoughts racing. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. The cruel memory of Julian and Giselle's laughter still echoed in her mind, but now Evelyn felt something she hadn't in a long time. Agency. She had found a way to fight back, on her own terms. What she didn't yet know was that this burgeoning alliance with Damien Cole would trigger a chain reaction, one that would spiral far beyond her expectations, and lead to a public moment so explosive even seasoned society columnists wouldn't have dared to script it. The Pacific Hope Foundation Gala was no longer just another formal evening. It had become a battlefield, a test of pride, power, and personal resolve. 2 days before the gala, Evelyn walked the marble-tiled halls of the West Estate, mentally preparing for what was coming. She and Natalie had been in constant communication, selecting gowns, coordinating accessories, drafting potential press statements. And yet, uncertainty gnawed at her. Was she turning the gala into a personal war zone? A stage for revenge? Every time that doubt crept in, Evelyn forced herself to remember Giselle's smug smirk as she strolled through her home. She remembered Julian's cold, dismissive indifference to her heartbreak. In a quiet moment of solitude, Evelyn retreated to her personal sanctuary, a glass-walled sunroom filled with lemon trees and rare orchids. She sank into a woven wicker chair, letting the soft afternoon light pour over her skin. She needed solitude. The baby kicked softly, a quiet reminder of the life she was fighting to protect. Just then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the caller ID, Damien Cole. Her pulse quickened. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep her tone composed. "Evelyn," came his deep, steady voice. "I'm finalizing my appearance at the gala. My team thinks I should arrive with someone significant. It's apparently important for optics." He hesitated, then added, "I know this might sound forward, but would you consider going with me?" Evelyn felt a rush of conflicting emotions. This was exactly what Natalie had been nudging her toward. Arriving with a powerful figure who could shift the spotlight, change the conversation, and remind people who she was. But it also meant stepping squarely into the arena of public scrutiny. The tabloids would have a field day if she walked in on Damien Cole's arm. She took a breath, grounding herself in the memory of Julian flaunting Giselle without shame. If he could do it, so could I. Only with dignity. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I'd appreciate the support." Damien's voice was warm. "I'll have my car pick you up at 6 p.m. sharp. We'll make an entrance together." After the call ended, Evelyn caught her reflection in the sunroom's glass. She saw a woman carrying heartbreak, but refusing to be broken by it. Determination burned in her eyes. And though fear lingered underneath it all, she whispered to herself, "I can do this." That evening, Natalie arrived at the estate, pulling behind her a rolling wardrobe case overflowing with designer gowns, heels, and sparkling accessories. "We're going to make you shine," Natalie declared, planting her fashion arsenal in the center of the grand foyer. She unzipped the case, revealing shimmering silks and velvets in rich, commanding tones: emerald, sapphire, ruby, and gold. "Pick whatever makes you feel strong," she said with a reassuring smile. "But if I may suggest, go bold. Let them see you, not just the pregnant woman left at home." Evelyn's fingers brushed over a deep emerald green velvet gown. She lifted it carefully from the rack, envisioning herself walking into the gala, chin lifted, baby bump proudly visible. Something about the color, it felt regal, unshakable. "This one," she said, her voice clear. Natalie beamed. "Excellent choice. With the right diamond accents, you'll look like royalty. Like a queen." They spent hours refining every detail, from hair and makeup to the statement necklace Natalie had pulled from a luxury boutique in Union Square. It was a subtle piece, but once the light hit it, it shimmered like a constellation. Every choice felt like a step toward restoring Evelyn's dignity. She was reclaiming herself, piece by piece. In the middle of all the final touches, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Julian. For the first time in days. "I'll be leaving early for the Pacific Hope Gala. Don't feel obligated to come if you're not feeling well." The message was cold, lacking even a trace of warmth or sincerity. Evelyn stared at it in disbelief. Even now, Julian was trying to erase her from the picture. Her reply was swift and to the point. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." For a fleeting moment, she let herself imagine his face when he saw her arrive on Damien Cole's arm. Would he feel even the slightest twinge of regret? Or would Giselle's presence fortify his ego? It didn't matter. Evelyn had made her decision. Whatever happened, she would not let Julian diminish her. Night settled over the West Estate as Natalie left, confident that Evelyn's look for the gala was nothing short of perfect. Before heading to bed, Evelyn lingered in the hallway just outside the nursery. The room was still in progress. There was a crib, a rocking chair, and soft pastel curtains swaying gently in the breeze. She placed a hand on her belly, speaking softly. "I'm doing this for us," she whispered, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. "So we can have the life we deserve." That night, as she drifted off to sleep, Evelyn dreamt of the gala. Camera flashes, the low buzz of high society voices mingling, Damien's steady presence beside her. The images shifted and blurred, but through it all, one emotion stayed rooted in her chest: hope. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt like she was taking charge of her own story, even if it meant stepping into a battlefield in heels. The day of the Pacific Hope Foundation Gala dawned bright and clear, touched by the gentle crispness of early autumn in Northern California. The venue, San Francisco's historic Fairmont Hotel ballroom, was abuzz with activity from the moment the sun rose. Truckloads of lush floral arrangements arrived, while a brigade of caterers moved swiftly with trays of delicate hors d'oeuvres. Outside, members of the media assembled behind barricades, positioning cameras and microphones, preparing to capture the arrivals of tech giants, philanthropists, and social royalty. Evelyn woke with a flutter of nerves that only grew stronger as the hours passed. After a light breakfast, she tried to distract herself by reading the morning news. The headlines were their usual blend of tabloid fodder and world affairs. Elon Musk unveiling a new rocket design, François-Henri Pinault finalizing a record-breaking luxury merger, finalizing a major acquisition in luxury goods. Meanwhile, gossip columns speculated endlessly about who would appear at the gala and with whom. But one headline made Evelyn's heart sink. An article titled "Julian West and Giselle Marquette, the power couple to watch," was accompanied by a grainy photo of the two of them leaving an upscale restaurant. Evelyn shut her laptop, pulse quickening. She reminded herself why she was doing this. Not to stoop to Julian's level, but to reclaim her dignity and secure her future. By late afternoon, Natalie arrived, flanked by a full hair and makeup team. Amid the flurry of curling irons, makeup brushes, and last-minute dress adjustments, Evelyn felt as if she were gearing up for battle. And in a way, she was. This wasn't just a social event. It was a reckoning. At precisely 6 p.m., a sleek black limousine pulled up to the front steps of the West Estate. Damian Cole stepped out in a perfectly tailored midnight blue tuxedo, his demeanor calm and confident. When Evelyn emerged in her emerald velvet gown, her hair styled in a soft, elegant chignon, Damian's eyes lit up with admiration. "You look breathtaking," he said, offering his arm. His tone was warm and sincere, free from the empty flattery Evelyn had grown used to hearing from the high society elite. "Thank you," she replied softly, looping her arm through his. A wave of calm swept over her. Whatever drama awaited them at the gala, she wouldn't face it alone. Meanwhile, over at the Fairmont Hotel ballroom, the red carpet was already abuzz with flashbulbs and whispered speculation. Julian West and Giselle Marquette arrived early, stepping out of a sleek silver Aston Martin. Cameras swiveled toward them. Journalists jockeyed for a clear shot. Giselle dazzled in a slinky silver gown, her dark hair cascading down her back in soft waves. Julian wore a deep charcoal tuxedo, his expression smug as they posed effortlessly for photographers. "Is it true?" one reporter called out. "Are you two the newest power couple in Silicon Valley?" Giselle flashed a coy smile. Julian gave a non-committal shrug, adding fuel to the fire of speculation. As they moved toward the entrance, Julian glanced behind him, half expecting to see Evelyn trailing indiscreetly behind. But she wasn't there. For just a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Had she decided not to come? Inside the opulent ballroom, under a canopy of crystal chandeliers and soft orchestral music, guests mingled. Billionaires chatted with ambassadors, CEOs toasted deals over glasses of champagne. Giselle immediately drew attention, flirting with fascinated admirers, while Julian soaked in the envy of less powerful businessmen. Everything appeared to be going perfectly for the scandalous pair. Until a sudden hush fell over the crowd near the grand entrance. All heads turned as Damian Cole entered, with a composed, radiant Evelyn West on his arm. For a beat, silence held the room hostage. Then came the explosion of flashing cameras, reporters elbowing one another to get the best shot. "Evelyn, over here. Is that Damian Cole with you? Evelyn, you look absolutely stunning." Evelyn, who had always been modest when it came to media attention, forced herself to lift her chin, offer a serene smile, and walk with quiet grace. The sparkle of her diamond necklace caught the ballroom lights, subtle but powerful, as if signaling to the crowd. She was no longer the scandal-shrouded wife, but a woman of strength and self-respect. Across the room, Julian froze, his jaw clenched, his fists tightened at his sides. He watched as Damian escorted Evelyn into the room with the ease of a seasoned gentleman. Giselle, sensing Julian's change in energy, followed his gaze until her eyes landed on Evelyn. A flicker of panic crossed her face, quickly masked by disdain. The crowd parted almost reverently, allowing Evelyn and Damian to pass. One by one, guests turned to greet her, complimenting her philanthropic efforts, praising her poise, and marveling at her glowing presence. In minutes, the entire atmosphere had shifted. Whispers buzzed through the grand hall. "Is Evelyn moving on? Who's the man with her? Is Damian Cole her new supporter? What about Julian and that French actress?" Damian led Evelyn to a tight circle that included some of the event's most powerful names. Among them, Elon Musk and François-Henri Pinault, engaged in animated discussion about new global initiatives. When Evelyn introduced herself, both men greeted her warmly, expressing genuine admiration for her work in children's healthcare and outreach. From across the room, Julian watched, his stomach roiling. He had envisioned this night as his moment to shine, to dazzle the elite with Giselle on his arm. But now, all eyes were on Evelyn, and the billionaire tech visionary by her side. Then, Evelyn caught Julian's eye. Beneath his carefully guarded exterior, she spotted it, the fury, and it brought with it a small, empowering wave of satisfaction. She hadn't come looking for revenge, but if Julian intended to humiliate her, she would show him just how brightly she could shine without him. Giselle gripped Julian's arm tightly, her eyes narrowing with feline precision, as if ready to pounce. The stage was set. Every major player was present. What had once been a well-meaning philanthropic gala had now become something else entirely, a battlefield of pride, power, and quiet vendettas. And it was just beginning. As the evening transitioned from the reception area to the grand dining hall, a live string quartet began playing a soft, flowing melody. Guests were ushered to their assigned round tables, draped in golden linens and centered with cascading white orchids and tall, flickering candles. The ambiance was ethereal, elegant, refined, carefully veiling the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Evelyn and Damien found themselves seated at a table near the stage, close enough to observe the evening's main events, yet perfectly positioned in clear view of everyone else. Natalie, ever the strategist, had arranged it that way. Across the room, Julian and Giselle were seated with a cluster of high-profile philanthropists. Though the physical distance between the two tables wasn't great, to Evelyn, it felt like miles of shattered trust and broken vows stretched between them. Throughout the dinner, Damien engaged Evelyn in thoughtful conversation. He asked about her vision for the West Foundation, and she opened up, sharing her dream of building a network of children's hospitals that fused advanced medical technology with compassionate care. Damien looked genuinely impressed. "You've got an extraordinary vision," he said, sipping sparkling water. "I'd love to see your plans in detail. There might be some great synergy with Titan Nova's medical tech branch." Evelyn smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude. The conversation wasn't just for show. He respected her mind, her mission. And after months of being defined only as Julian's wife or a headline in some gossip rag, that meant everything. Just as the main course, pan-seared sea bass over truffle risotto, was placed before them, the evening's MC stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we have some incredible presentations tonight, followed by a charity auction you won't want to miss. But first, please welcome the CEO of Titan Nova Technologies, Mr. Damien Cole, here to share a groundbreaking philanthropic platform." A ripple of applause moved through the ballroom. Damien stood, straightened his jacket, and gave Evelyn a quiet, supportive nod before making his way to the podium. He began his presentation, introducing a digital platform designed to revolutionize how charitable funds were tracked, distributed, and reported. The crowd listened attentively, impressed by the clarity and innovation in his vision. Evelyn watched, a spark of pride swelling in her chest. She hadn't known Damien long, but in that moment, she admired the substance behind the title. From across the room, she noticed Giselle whispering into Julian's ear, her eyes darting from him to Damien on stage. Julian's face remained stoic, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. When Damien concluded, the room erupted in applause. Then the MC returned. "And now," he said, "please welcome Mr. Julian West to present a significant donation from the West Foundation." Julian rose, adjusting his cufflinks as he moved deliberately through the crowd, through the throng. Before stepping up, Julian paused at Evelyn's table, his cold gaze locked with hers. "You seem to be enjoying yourself," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. "Quite the partner you've chosen." Evelyn held her composure. "Yes, I am enjoying myself," she replied smoothly. "And I hope you're satisfied with your choice too." Julian's eyes flickered, an emotion passed through them that Evelyn immediately recognized. Jealousy. But he masked it quickly, offering no reply as he turned and strode onto the stage, joining Damien and the MC. Julian announced a massive pledge from the West Foundation, an amount that drew gasps from the audience. Yet even such a staggering figure couldn't overshadow Damien's compelling, forward-thinking presentation. Whispers stirred throughout the room. Is Julian being outshined by Damien Cole? As the formalities concluded, the lights dimmed, and a live orchestra eased into a graceful waltz. The dance floor opened, couples moving elegantly beneath the chandelier's glow. Damien returned to Evelyn, offering his hand. "Would you do me the honor?" he asked, voice low and warm. Evelyn hesitated for a heartbeat, momentarily self-conscious of her baby bump. But Damien's reassuring smile melted the doubt away. She took his hand. He guided her onto the dance floor. The other couples subtly made space, parting like silk to allow them room. The hush that fell over the crowd was thick with awe. Camera flashes popped discreetly. Evelyn, glowing with quiet confidence, danced in the arms of one of the world's most influential men, graceful, radiant, and undeniably powerful. Julian, standing at the edge of the dance floor, felt his stomach knot. He had never seen Evelyn like this, so alive, so commanding. And in that moment, the truth hit him like a blow. He had underestimated her. That truth brought with it a bitter taste of regret, one he quickly buried beneath a mask of cold indifference. Giselle, sensing his unease, slipped closer. "It's just a dance," she purred. "Don't let it get to you." But it did. For the first time in a long time, Julian found himself sidelined, overshadowed. He had expected Evelyn to fade into the background or fall apart under pressure. Instead, she was thriving, stealing the spotlight in a way Giselle never could. The waltz ended. Damien guided Evelyn off the dance floor, escorting her back to their table. To Evelyn's surprise, a small crowd had already gathered. Philanthropists, media figures, and a few well-known journalists eager to speak with her. They praised her elegance, her strength. They asked about her charitable work, her upcoming plans. Evelyn answered with grace, steering every question back to her foundation, her mission, her future. In a corner of the ballroom, Giselle seethed. She had come tonight expecting to be the center of attention, believing Julian's status would secure her the spotlight. But it was Evelyn who had captivated the room. Instead, she found herself overshadowed by Evelyn's unexpected resurgence. As the evening wore on, Giselle could no longer mask her frustration. She clutched Julian's arm with a sickly sweet smile. "Darling," she cooed just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Aren't we going to dance too?" Julian forced a tight smile and led Giselle onto the dance floor. But even as he moved through the motions of the waltz, his gaze kept drifting. Back to Evelyn. Inside, a storm brewed. A bitter tug-of-war between the life he had chosen with Giselle and the security he had discarded with Evelyn. But he had no idea. The night's real fireworks were still to come. The gala's charity auction began with lavish fanfare. A flamboyant auctioneer in a bright red bow tie took to the stage, presenting items donated by elite patrons, everything from rare artworks to extravagant all-inclusive travel experiences. The energy in the room surged with every rising bid. Evelyn stood beside Damien near a display of luxury art pieces, half listening to the rhythmic cadence of the auctioneer's voice as he praised a particularly rare painting. She kept her posture poised, but she could feel it, Julian's stare slicing across the ballroom like a blade. Despite the polished decor and polite applause, the tension in the room was mounting, simmering just beneath the surface. Then came the final item of the night, a private island getaway for two, complete with a luxury yacht experience, generously sponsored by the Pacific Hope Foundation's top donors. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was the evening's crown jewel, a headline-worthy prize expected to draw sky-high bids. Damien leaned toward Evelyn, his voice low and teasing. "Maybe we should bid," he said with a playful glint in his eye. "Imagine planning global health strategies surrounded by turquoise waters." Evelyn blushed at the suggestion. She knew he was only half serious, but the invitation hinted at something deeper. A future beyond scandal. A life beyond Julian. "We might bankrupt you," she joked softly. "But it's definitely tempting." The auctioneer launched into a rapid-fire chant, starting the bidding at a jaw-dropping figure. Hands shot into the air. The energy was electric, lively and tense. Then, like venom laced in honey, a soft voice whispered beside Damien. It was Giselle. Wearing a saccharine smile, she leaned in close, purposefully ignoring Evelyn. "Damien," she purred, "I've been hearing incredible things about your new platform. It's causing waves internationally. I'd love to arrange a private demo for some influential friends." "I know," Damien said smoothly, ever the gentleman. He nodded politely. "I'd be happy to discuss that, Miss Marquette." Evelyn watched the exchange carefully, her suspicions rising. Giselle was clearly trying to assert dominance, her posture deliberately angled to block Evelyn out, her tone laced with flirtation, her eyes gleaming with calculation. She wanted Damien's attention, and she wanted Evelyn to know it. Just then, Julian approached, placing a possessive hand on Giselle's waist. "Darling," he said pointedly, shooting a sharp glance at Damien. "Let's not monopolize Mr. Cole. After all, Miss Marquette and I have a yacht trip to plan." He added with faux charm, "Assuming we win the bid, of course." Giselle smirked. "We'll bid until the final hammer falls." Evelyn felt the sting. The subtext wasn't subtle. Giselle was implying that she and Julian were planning an intimate getaway, the kind Evelyn might have once shared with him before everything had unraveled. As if sensing her tension, the baby gave a gentle kick. Evelyn inhaled slowly, willing herself to stay composed, refusing to let their provocations get under her skin. Across the stage, the auctioneer's voice climbed with excitement. 1 million, do I hear 11? Yes, thank you, sir. 12. Yes, 12 going once. Julian raised his paddle with theatrical flair. 2 million, he announced, drawing gasps from the room. Applause followed, and whispers rippled through the guests. Damien turned to Evelyn, silently asking for her input. She gave a subtle nod. With quiet confidence, he raised his paddle. 2.5 million, he said, his voice smooth, measured. The crowd stirred with anticipation. Julian's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being challenged like this. 3 million, he fired back, lifting his paddle once more. Evelyn's pulse quickened. This was turning into a spectacle, and she was caught in the middle. Damien, sensing her discomfort, placed a calming hand over hers. His touch was steady, reassuring. He wasn't backing down. 3.5, Damien declared. A new wave of energy buzzed through the ballroom. All eyes turned toward the two men. Julian, flanked by Giselle. Damien, standing tall beside Evelyn. The tension in the room thickened, every guest silently watching, waiting. Julian's face darkened. He offered a brittle smile. 4 million, he said, his voice echoing sharply across the mic. More gasps, applause, a few stunned murmurs. The auctioneer looked to Damien, brows raised in anticipation. Evelyn tugged gently at Damien's arm, concern flickering across her face. The moment was teetering on the edge. But Damien simply exhaled, and raised his paddle with an air of finality. 5 million, Damien said, calm and clear. An audible gasp rippled through the crowd. Even the auctioneer froze for a split second before regaining his composure. 5 million, going once, going twice, sold to Mr. Cole. The ballroom erupted in applause, though more than a few faces showed stunned disbelief. The final item of the night had just set a record-breaking price. Damien turned to Evelyn and offered a small, private smile. She mouthed a quiet, "Thank you," knowing exactly what his gesture meant. He had done it not for spectacle, but to protect her pride. Maybe even to send a message. Across the room, Julian stood rigid, bristling with fury. Giselle clung to his arm, her expression twisted in disbelief and irritation. Evelyn caught the moment. Julian, usually composed, was now visibly unraveling. The irony wasn't lost on her. His attempt to parade a new relationship had only driven her closer into the orbit of someone far more powerful. As the auction wrapped and guests began drifting toward the after-party lounge, Julian made his move. He cornered Evelyn near a velvet-draped pillar, his eyes simmering with resentment. "Enjoy your victory," he hissed, his voice low and sharp. "You think showing up with Damien Cole will make me jealous?" Evelyn stood her ground, refusing to shrink. "I'm not parading," she said calmly. "I'm living my life. If that threatens you, maybe you should rethink the life you've chosen." His eyes dropped to her belly. For the briefest second, she thought she saw something flicker. Concern, maybe? But it vanished just as quickly. He leaned in closer, his voice now a dark whisper. "Be careful, Evelyn. You're playing a dangerous game." She straightened her posture, chin lifted high. "I learned from the best," she replied, her voice steady. Then she turned on her heel and walked away, back to Damien. Julian stood there, seething. In the distance, Giselle gave a small wave, beckoning him with a forced smile. He went to her, but his eyes never left Evelyn. Around them the gala continued, glittering and grand, unaware of the private storm still swirling. But the night's revelations were far from over. The after-party unfolded inside the Fairmont's iconic Laurel Court, transformed for the evening into a sultry lounge. The lighting was low and warm, the velvet armchairs plush, and a live jazz band filled the air with slow saxophone melodies. Guests sipped expensive champagne, laughter echoing beneath the high ceilings. But underneath the glamour, hushed voices and cautious glances hinted at deeper stories still unraveling. Evelyn sat on a vintage chaise near the far end of the room, Damien at her side. Natalie hovered nearby, subtly intercepting curious guests who tried to inch too close to Evelyn's personal life. Evelyn was quietly grateful for Natalie's protective energy and for Damien's constant, grounding presence. Still, her emotions were raw, her body weary. The baby had been restless all evening, and the subtle shifts and kicks reminded her of how much strength it took to simply be present. "Are you all right?" Damien asked gently, covering her hand with his. She nodded, offering a tired smile. "Yes, just overwhelmed." Before Damien could respond, a loud commotion erupted near the bar. Giselle Marquette's shrill voice cut through the mellow jazz like shattered glass. "Are you calling me a liar?" she barked. eyes blazing as she stared down an elderly society matron, who now looked both startled and visibly shaken. Heads turned instantly, eager for drama. Julian rushed to Giselle's side, trying to calm her, but she yanked her arm away. "I have nothing to hide," she declared, her cheeks flushed, "and I certainly don't need some uptight relic questioning my integrity." A heavy hush blanketed the room. The matron, Mrs. Sutcliffe, known for her sharp tongue, turned a shade of crimson and stammered out an apology. Natalie, ever the PR professional, moved quickly to separate the women, smoothing over the scene with quiet diplomacy. But the damage was already done. Murmurs swirled, guests whispering about Giselle's explosive temper, her lack of tact, and the cracks showing in Julian's carefully controlled image. Evelyn watched the chaos unfold with a complicated mix of pity and exhaustion. She'd heard rumors about Mrs. Sutcliffe's brutal honesty. It was no secret the woman had made a sly comment about Giselle's new money pedigree, something that clearly sparked the outburst. Either way, it wasn't a good look for Julian. A few minutes later, Julian approached Evelyn and Damien. He looked pale. His tie hung loose around his neck. A sheen of sweat glistened on his temple. Meanwhile, Giselle remained at the bar, nursing a glass of something that looked far too dark to be champagne. "Damien, Evelyn," Julian said, clearing his throat. "I'd like a word. In private." Evelyn and Damien exchanged a brief glance. With a quiet nod, she stood, signaling she would handle it. They stepped into a dim alcove just off the main lounge, away from curious eyes and listening ears. "What do you want, Julian?" Evelyn asked, her arms folding instinctively over her bump. He exhaled hard, as though weighed down by 1,000 regrets. "Look, this is messy," he began. "Giselle is a complication. I'll admit that." His voice dropped lower. "But don't think for a second I'm going to let you tarnish the West name by getting wrapped up in rumors about you and Damien Cole." Evelyn stiffened. "You have the nerve to talk about rumors," she snapped, "when you've spent the entire night parading Giselle around like some prize?" Julian's carefully built composure began to fracture. "Giselle isn't the issue here, Evelyn. You're using this event and Damien to humiliate me." Evelyn felt a flash of anger rise in her chest. "Humiliate you?" she repeated, her voice tight. "Julian, you've been humiliating me for months, parading Giselle around, refusing to even deny the affair. And now you expect me to keep smiling, keep playing the devoted wife while you dismantle our marriage in public?" She shook her head. "No, I won't." Julian's expression flickered with something almost like desperation. "Don't do this, Evelyn," he said, his voice dropping, nearly a plea. "Whatever you think of me, the reputation of the West Foundation is on the line. Our child's future is on the line." For a moment, tears pricked at the corners of Evelyn's eyes. She remembered when Julian's words used to be rooted in love, not manipulation. "If you truly cared about our child's future," she said evenly, "you would have respected our marriage." Julian's fists clenched at his sides. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," Evelyn challenged, her voice rising. "Because from where I'm standing, all I see is a man who would rather betray his vows than face his own insecurities." She stepped closer, her words cutting through the space between them. "You lost your conscience somewhere on your way up the social ladder." They stood there, locked in a silence that throbbed with emotion. Somewhere in the background, the jazz band played a soft, sultry tune, completely at odds with the storm between them. Finally, Julian looked away, running a hand through his hair. "Fine, do what you want," he muttered. "But don't forget, you're still carrying my child. Don't drag us both down." He turned and walked away without another word, heading back to Giselle, who downed the rest of her drink in one long swallow. Evelyn stayed rooted in place, her body trembling with fury and heartbreak. It felt like a vice was tightening around her chest, each second squeezing harder. Natalie appeared at her side, moving carefully. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Evelyn turned toward her, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm tired," she whispered. "Tired of being hurt, tired of being made to feel guilty for wanting basic respect." Natalie wrapped her in a quiet hug. "Then let this be the last time you ever feel that way," she said softly but firmly. Just then, Damien approached, concern etched into every line of his face. It was clear he had overheard at least part of the conversation. "Shall we leave?" he asked, his voice low, steady. "We've made our statement." Evelyn hesitated. A part of her wanted to stay, if only to show that she wouldn't be intimidated or chased away. But the larger part of her, the exhausted, emotionally frayed part, longed for peace, for rest. "Yes," she finally said. "Let's go." With Natalie's help, they exited the gala quietly, slipping past the curious stares and into the crisp San Francisco night. The limo was waiting. It whisked Evelyn away from the chaos of the Fairmont Hotel and into the safety of the dark, quiet car. As they pulled away from the grand building, she let out a shaky breath. She didn't know what storms tomorrow might bring. But tonight, she had survived the battle. In the days that followed the Pacific Hope Foundation Gala, the media went into overdrive. Articles and viral social media posts dissected every inch of the night. Julian's public display of affection with Giselle, Evelyn's show-stopping entrance with Damian Cole, the record-breaking auction showdown, and of course Giselle's now infamous bar meltdown. Tabloids splashed side-by-side photos of Evelyn and Giselle under dramatic headlines like, "Who really stole the gala?" Evelyn found brief moments of comfort in the quiet corners of the West Estate. She used the time to recharge after the emotional whirlwind. She spent hours reading pregnancy books, tending to the nursery, and taking slow, reflective walks in the garden, always accompanied by Natalie's steady, calming presence. But every time she stepped outside or glanced at her phone, a fresh wave of speculation greeted her. The press wouldn't let go. Rumors about her crumbling marriage and her potential involvement with Damian flooded the headlines. She tried to tune out the noise, but some of it always slipped through. Meanwhile, Damian checked in regularly. Sometimes just a text, "Hang in there." Other times a phone call to update her on the progress of the philanthropic platform he had launched at the gala. He never pressed for details about Julian. He never asked for more than she was willing to give. Instead, he offered her something rare: calm, understanding, and space. A quiet kind of kindness that Evelyn hadn't realized she'd been so deeply missing. Julian, on the other hand, was conspicuously absent. He spent most nights away from the estate. The staff whispered about his late returns and Giselle's car occasionally spotted near the gates before dawn. Day by day, Evelyn felt less like she was bleeding from betrayal, and more like she was healing. The pain dulled. It stopped slicing and started fading. She told herself again and again, "I deserve someone who chooses me fully, not someone who plays emotional chess with my heart." Then, one afternoon, Natalie burst into Evelyn's private sitting room, iPad in hand, her face pale with urgency. "You need to see this," she said, breathless. She held out the tablet. A leaked video clip from the gala's after-party played on screen. It showed Giselle's outburst at the bar, but now the footage zoomed in, clearly capturing her slurred words to Mrs. Sutcliffe, a woman long rumored to have powerful connections in Washington. Giselle could be heard clearly, her voice dripping with disdain. An old relic who wouldn't know class if it danced naked in front of her. Tango in front of her. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. "That's worse than I imagined." "Mrs. Sutcliffe is on the board of half the major charities in New York," Natalie said, grimacing. "And guess what? She's threatening to pull all support from the West Foundation unless Julian issues a formal apology on Giselle's behalf." Evelyn sank into a velvet armchair, her mind spinning. The West Foundation was her pride, her purpose, a philanthropic legacy she had nurtured for years. And now it was being threatened because of Julian's reckless affair. "What does Julian say about all this?" she asked, already suspecting the answer. Natalie's expression darkened. "He's not exactly responding. I've tried contacting him, even tried Giselle's number. Nothing. It's like they've both disappeared into damage control mode while ignoring everyone else." A flare of anger sparked in Evelyn's chest. Alongside it came something else: resolve. She stood tall, shoulders squaring. "If Julian won't handle this, then I will. The Foundation's reputation is on the line." Natalie exhaled in relief. "Thank you. And Evelyn, I think you should consider making a public statement, something that reminds people you are the leadership force behind the Foundation. Clarify that Giselle isn't affiliated and that you remain committed to its mission." Despite everything, Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had co-founded the West Foundation with Julian, but much of the heart, vision, and long-term strategy had come from her. She wouldn't let personal scandal unravel the work that meant so much to so many. "Let's draft a statement," she said firmly. We'll spotlight our pediatric health initiatives, and I want a face-to-face with Mrs. Sutcliffe. Personally. Natalie gave a supportive smile. You're doing the right thing. Within hours, Evelyn and Natalie worked with tireless precision, typing up a formal statement reaffirming the West Foundation's commitment to its core values. Evelyn herself would hold a press conference the next day, hoping to stop the bleeding, quash rumors, and reassure donors. She felt a nervous pang at the idea of standing in front of the media again. But the stakes were far too high for retreat. The next morning, camera flashes sparked beyond the estate's iron gates as reporters gathered for the press conference. A small podium had been arranged in the courtyard, flanked by banners bearing the West Foundation's emblem. Evelyn stepped out, dressed in a chic navy maternity gown. Her hair was swept back, her features calm and composed. Natalie stood a few feet away, arms folded, radiating quiet professionalism. After a brief introduction from the Foundation's PR lead, Evelyn approached the microphone. The West Foundation remains steadfast in its mission to provide quality health care to children in underserved communities, she began, her voice steady and clear, echoing across the courtyard. Events at the Pacific Hope Foundation Gala have led to misunderstandings, Evelyn said, her voice composed and clear, but rest assured, our commitment has never wavered. She continued, expressing regret for any perceived disrespect shown to valued donors, making it abundantly clear that such behavior did not reflect the West Foundation's values. The press, ever hungry for scandal, tried to steer the conversation toward Giselle and Julian, but Evelyn deflected gracefully. I'm here to speak about the Foundation, she repeated, unwavering. Every inch, the poised spokeswoman. As the press conference wrapped, polite applause rose, followed by a flurry of shouted questions. In the distance, Evelyn spotted a familiar black car pulling up. Julian's car. Her stomach clenched, but her expression remained calm. As she stepped away from the podium, Natalie leaned in and touched her shoulder. Do you want me to handle him? Evelyn shook her head. No, I'll deal with it. Julian emerged from the vehicle, his face tight with strain. He moved toward her with slow, measured steps, avoiding the reporters still snapping photos and whispering furiously. For a moment, they stood face to face, surrounded by the remnants of the press, the weight of their broken marriage pressing down on the air between them. That was quite the speech, Julian said, his voice low. Didn't know you were going public. Evelyn lifted her chin. I couldn't wait for you to handle it. The Foundation is suffering, Julian. I won't let our personal issues destroy something that matters to so many people. He looked away, jaw tightening, as if searching for the right words. Giselle's sorting herself out, he muttered finally, offering no explanation, no real apology. Evelyn took a steadying breath, pushing down the familiar sting of disappointment. She realized then that whatever fragile thread still connected them, it was fraying fast. We have a child on the way, she said, her tone calm and deliberate. We need to figure out how to move forward, without tearing each other apart, for the Foundation's sake and for our baby. Julian gave a short nod, but his eyes were blank, filled with a kind of emptiness that Evelyn had grown used to. He turned and walked back toward the press, photographers capturing the entire encounter, the tension between them hanging like fog. Evelyn felt the baby kick again, as if reminding her to keep going. And she would. Because in that moment, she resolved something deeply personal. She would no longer be defined by Julian's decisions or by the drama of a marriage gone sour. She was Evelyn West, co-founder of the West Foundation, soon-to-be mother, and a woman who would chart her own path forward. Her own course, regardless of the chaos swirling around her. Weeks passed in a blur of press conferences, meetings with donors, and non-stop damage control. Slowly but surely, the West Foundation began to regain its footing. Mrs. Sutcliffe, after receiving a heartfelt apology from Evelyn and a clear reassurance that Giselle held no official role within the organization, agreed not to withdraw her support. Other benefactors followed her lead, encouraged by Evelyn's unwavering leadership and grace under pressure. Meanwhile, Julian and Giselle grew increasingly volatile. Their loud, public fights at high-end restaurants became tabloid gold. Giselle's name stayed in the headlines, tied to a carousel of rumors. Some linked her to other wealthy men, Others reported she'd been blacklisted from exclusive social circles due to her increasingly unhinged behavior. Julian found himself stuck, trapped between a scandal-laden mistress and a crumbling public image. During that time, Evelyn focused on what truly mattered: her pregnancy, her philanthropic mission, and the supportive relationships that surrounded her. Natalie remained her rock, more sister than friend, and Damien Cole became a steady, calming presence. Their conversations, once strictly professional, slowly shifted into genuine connection, shared laughter, real camaraderie. And all the while, Damien gave Evelyn the space she needed to heal, never crossing boundaries she wasn't ready to move past. Finally, the day arrived for the West Foundation's annual fundraiser. It wasn't the scale of the Pacific Hope Gala, but it was essential to the Foundation's annual goals. This year, Evelyn was the highlight of the evening, scheduled to give the keynote address. The venue, a refined hotel ballroom in downtown San Francisco, was prepared with understated elegance, soft candlelight, tasteful floral arrangements, a mood of sincerity and quiet purpose rather than extravagance. Evelyn arrived in a flowing, floor-length burgundy gown that gracefully embraced her 8-month pregnancy. The baby stirred, a gentle reminder of life, of hope. As she stepped onto the stage, she looked out over the crowd. Donors, doctors from partner hospitals, business leaders, and loyal friends. She began her speech with honesty, recounting her journey, the storms she had weathered, the heartbreak she had endured. But she also spoke of passion, of purpose, of the children whose lives would be changed because of the work they were all doing together. Her voice, strong and sincere, filled the room. Applause rose at all the right moments, and Evelyn noticed glistening eyes throughout the audience. At the edge of the room, Damien stood quietly, watching her with genuine admiration. Julian was nowhere to be seen, caught up in yet another Giselle-related scandal. As Evelyn concluded, the ballroom rose to its feet in a standing ovation. She stepped off the stage, cheeks flushed, not from nerves, but from gratitude, from release. "Bravo," Damien whispered, his voice low and proud. As she reached him, Damien whispered, "I'm proud of you." But before Evelyn could respond, a sharp jolt of pain seized her abdomen. Her expression shifted, eyes wide, face paling. She clutched Damien's arm, panic flickering in her gaze. Another contraction surged through her, stronger this time. The elegant ballroom around her blurred. Natalie was the first to react, rushing forward with alarm etched across her face. "Evelyn, are you—" I think the baby's coming," Evelyn gasped, clinging to Damien for support. Chaos erupted instantly. Event staff scrambled to clear a path. Guests rushed to offer help. Natalie whipped out her phone, frantically calling for a car. They carefully guided Evelyn to a nearby suite, where a few medically trained guests quickly checked her vitals. It became clear her contractions were intense and fast. There might not be enough time to get to the hospital if they waited. Damien knelt beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "It's going to be okay," he said, his voice steady despite the worry etched in his brow. The next hour blurred into waves of pain, rushed phone calls, and improvised care. By the time paramedics arrived, Evelyn was in full labor. She was rushed to the nearest hospital, with Natalie and Damien right behind her in the ambulance. Through the haze of contractions, Evelyn's thoughts spiraled, adrift in pain and emotion. Julian, the baby's father, nowhere to be found in her moment of greatest need. But despite the fear, a quiet, undeniable strength rose within her. "I won't be defined by his absence," she thought through gritted teeth. This child, her child, deserved love, safety, a future that wasn't tethered to betrayal. With every labored breath, Evelyn held on to hope that this wasn't the end of something, it was the beginning. After a difficult labor, Evelyn gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Exhausted but overwhelmed with joy, she cradled him against her chest, tears streaming freely. His tiny fingers curled around hers. His soft, newborn cries filled the hospital room. And the pain of the past months faded in that one breathtaking moment of connection. Out in the hallway, Natalie stood quietly, phone to her ear. She left a voicemail. "Julian, your son is here." No reply came. She turned to Damien and gave him a soft nod. He stepped into the room, walked to Evelyn's bedside, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He looked down at the swaddled newborn and smiled. "Congratulations," he said, voice low and full of awe. Evelyn looked from her son to Damien, then to Natalie, the two people who had stood by her through every painful, transformative chapter, and she felt no regret, only a deep, profound gratitude for the unexpected turn her life had taken. Her life had taken a turn. And here, in a quiet hospital room beneath sterile fluorescent lights, Evelyn West found her moment of clarity. The spotlight she had momentarily captured at the gala now felt irrelevant compared to the warmth and love she cradled in her arms. One day later, after the initial whirlwind of labor had passed, Evelyn sat by the window in her hospital room, gently rocking her newborn son. Michael James West, she whispered promises into the soft curls of his hair, promises of protection, of truth, of never letting him be defined by anyone else's betrayal. When she glanced up, Damien was there, watching her quietly from across the room, a gentle smile on his face that spoke volumes of admiration and respect. No, her story wasn't over. There would be custody battles, divorce proceedings, more headlines and public scrutiny. But in this peaceful moment, Evelyn knew with unwavering certainty she and her son would face the future on their terms. They had weathered the storm. Now, it was time to step fully into the light. From glittering galas to hushed hospital corridors, this powerful story of betrayal and transformation reveals one undeniable truth. Real strength is born when everything else falls apart. Evelyn faced heartbreak head-on, drawing strength from her resolve and from the unshakable support of true allies like Natalie and Damien. Julian's wealth couldn't conceal the fractures in his world, and Giselle's glamorous image couldn't protect her from the consequences of her own chaos. But Evelyn? She rose, undaunted. If the twists left you breathless, or if you found yourself silently cheering when Evelyn found her voice, now it's your turn. Hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping, real-life drama stories. Your support fuels these tales of love, power, and redemption, and helps us bring more of them to the screen. Stay tuned for the next compelling saga. And remember, no matter how dark the night, a new dawn always awaits. How many of you, after watching this, truly want to hear what happens in part 2? If this story stirred something in you, if you felt Evelyn's pain, her quiet strength, her silent storm, then let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words mean more than you know. I'll be replying personally and scheduling part 2 for everyone who asks. Your voice helps shape what comes next. And if you do want to hear the rest of Evelyn's journey, make sure to follow us so you don't miss it. Her story is just beginning, and I promise, part 2 hits even deeper.